So I'm going to ask Raju and Derek from Kaiser Permanente and Dexcare to actually join us, and I'm going to stop sharing mine and let them share their screens. Welcome, guys, and thank you.
Thank you, Eric. And I'll go ahead and share the presentation here in a moment. But I wanted to, before I get there, so my name is Derek Streat. I'm co-founder and chief executive officer of Dexcare. We're a company, a data-driven intelligence company that spun out of Providence Health System about a year ago, and we focus on improving healthcare access for everyone. I'm really pleased to be joined here today with my partner and friend, Raghunath Raman from Kaiser. I'll let him introduce himself here in a moment. We've been working with Kaiser for probably coming up on 2 years now at this point. First helping them improve and scale access in a virtual sense across the entire Kaiser network, and now moving into in-clinic appointments and things like that as well. And so we'll do this as a Q&A. We have some slides to share as well, but I find that you'll see Raghu's a pretty smart, accomplished person who runs a lot of digital things over at Kaiser. So I look best when Raghu does most of the talking here. So why don't we start, Raghu, here, share a little bit about yourself and your background, and at the same time, since we have limited time here, share with the group, since we're talking about workforce here today, kind of what's going on at Kaiser from a workforce standpoint, and what role, as a digital leader yourself, what role do you think digital plays in reducing the burden on strained resources and extending capacity?
Thank you, Derek. Thank you for this opportunity to share. I'm Raghu at Kaiser, work at Kaiser. My role is that of a chief digital architect. Wear a hat of building and designing technical solutions that are there. And in KP Digital, one of the things we have is how do you control and optimize the member experience? Kaiser's model, as some of you are aware, is slightly different from some of the other pure payer models or pure provider networks with an HMO. And so how do we have a closed ecosystem where we are trying to optimize this thing? I think the topic that was there very relevant was probably workforce. And I think there's a conversation about workforce that we are talking about, provider workforce and then nurse workforce and so on. So different components of that. The way we have certain things that we have been approaching is definitely how do we make things easier for members? I think that's a very important focus for us, how getting them access to the right physician at the right time and the right place. So that's one experience that we are very focused on. At the same time, it has implications on how the operations are there. So as you're aware, Kaiser is in multiple regions, multiple states, and they have their variations of workforce operations that are there. So how do you marry that and abstract that from a consumer? And how do you marry that? That's one thing. There is definitely, whether it's a pandemic or not, there's always pressure on, I'm going to use the word physician burnout. There are multiple reasons why physicians are not able to get to what they want to do in the pure practicing medicine, if you want to use that word, whether it is inbox management, whether it is appointing, whether it is notes. How am I getting to the physician, to my members at the right time as quickly as possible? How do we remove friction in that system? So where can we do that? So I think there were multiple pieces to this puzzle. And something that we believe very strongly is at one end of the stethoscope is a physician, the other end is the patient. We want to digitize as much as possible everything that enables convenience for the consumer and optimize something for the physician. So that is very important, and say, where do we use what and how to do those levers? So that's, I would say, as this setting of where we are. And there are multiple pieces of technology that we have used. And we'll probably showcase a little bit of that and we are using Dexcare and a few other technologies, but at least we give you a flavor of how we are solving some of these problems. So Derek, do you want to bring up that slide that you have?
Great, yeah. So thanks for share the screen here. Someone just called out if you're not seeing my screen here. Okay, so Raghu, when you and I first met in mid 2020, it was after our bosses, the respective CDOs at Kaiser and Providence respectively, arranged a meeting. Maybe take the group here through what problems you were looking to solve and what was driving urgency. And this screen, of course, was I I think from one of our first kickoff meetings when we finally decided to work together here, and kind of exemplifies the first project we work on here. So what were you looking to accomplish or solve?
I think I'm going to use this, even though this was a project, since this forum is really around workforce optimization, I'm going to use some of that context and lens as well. Not every region was staffed from a physician to be able to provide 24/7 care. So that was one thing. So we have we have some markets where we have our own staff. Sometimes we are with provider networks. We send them off to certain medical office buildings and so on and so forth. So we had a variation in experience in different regions. So that's one. Secondly, the notion of saying 24/7, what we meant was certain places, if it was care after 5 p.m. meant go to the ER. We did not want that. It meant picking up the telephone without our ability to talk to a physician. So what is that we meant by urgent care that is there? The other problem we were really trying to solve was the definition of urgent was something that is a clinical definition of something needs urgency, whereas a member's perception that this is urgent. I have a paper cut and it's urgent that I need to see somebody. That's my urgency versus a clinical saying, okay, the notion of urgent is something which was very different from different constituents. So how do you triage and get to the right person and the right thing, right? That was very important by saying people who are, their perception of urgent was important. So we needed to marry what is a member's need for urgency, not overburden the physician group with what is necessary, and do load balancing across 24/7. That was very key for us. Everybody, and so how do we complement each other? So, I mean, this is a common thing that happens in other industries where you say follow the sun, and they'll follow the sun in terms of call centers and something moving from one side to there. We wanted to implement another model saying, how do we load balance our physician groups and how to do that? So even though we are one Kaiser Permanente, as some of you know, we are 8 regions with 8 Permanente physician groups. How do you load balance and say, where do calls go from when? How do you differentiate between adult pediatrics? How do you differentiate between truly emergency and non-emergency? What is that we can do to give a superior experience, both that is from members' convenience and a provider efficiency model? So that's the synopsis of what we would say is our virtual urgent care, this thing. We wanted to offer 3 modalities, definitely phone, video, and chat. And it is interesting that 1/3 of our people, only 1/3 prefer video. The 2/3 want phone. Even if I say we'll do a video call with your physician, they say, no, I prefer a phone. So interesting dynamics of what we have learned and saying they want access to a physician, but what modality also impacts what you can or cannot do. Derek, I think so. Those were the principles around why we said we needed to create a uniform enterprise solution that is balancing variations in our physician network and how we can balance our consumer experience.
Great. Thank you, Raghu. So, before we get to before I ask you about the Dexcare experience itself, I'll share a little bit with the group here about the platform so you can know where we're coming from here. So Dexcare, our core product, same name as the company, is a software platform that orchestrates the demand side of healthcare, so the consumers, patients coming in, excuse me, with the resources, facilities, providers, et cetera, different care modalities, as Raghu was talking about, orchestrates those two together. And it's all in service of making access better for everyone, patients, providers, and health systems. And so the way we make it better is we focus on 3 things exemplified in this slide here. Starting at 9 o'clock there on the slide, we make all of those access points, again, clinics, providers, et cetera, more discoverable to consumers wherever they may be spending time online, search engines, other websites, mobile apps, et cetera. The next thing that we do is we then intelligently route those consumers to safest and best care option for them. And we do that by leveraging our unique understanding of consumer intent and motivation. That's one of the reasons that we spend time understanding what people are searching for online and where they're spending time, as well as clinical need. We tie deeply into the EMR. And then finally, and somewhat uniquely, what the providers and the health systems are looking to accomplish as well. And that enables us to get to the third component there at 3 o'clock on the slide here, capacity optimization or load balancing, as Raghu referred to. And so through a series of both rules and algorithms that we've trained up to yield certain target variables like shortest visit duration, highest satisfaction, lowest cost of delivery of care, et cetera. We're able to match modality, setting, and provider with patients in a way that achieves the results that all three of those constituencies are looking for. And we do it all in a very integrated way to the EMR. So we respect the EMR as a single source of truth. And so when you double click on optimized capacity, we'll collect data in kind of like the following categories on the left side: who is available, who's not, where are facilities and providers located if the modality is in person, how efficient are those providers or modalities or settings in taking care of certain patients that have certain reason for visits or things like that. What's the utilization history of those resources? Raghu mentioned burnout. We're always kind of looking at that as well to factor into the mix. And, just because two providers are available, if one has been heavily overutilized, we'll make sure that the one is not that is less utilized is the one that shows up first or is matched to that patient. And then of course, capability, what's their experience in actually taking care effectively of those patients and taking care of their issues within, limited number of visits, things like that. And finally, there's a back end of this system as well that a clinic operator, in this case, you're seeing the operator of a virtual clinic, the dashboard they'd see after all of that matching has been done of patients on the left and providers on the right, kind of like an autopilot in a 737. If the algorithms fire off the right way and the rules do the right way, which they often do, there's nothing that the clinic operator needs to do to kind of rebalance. But if they want to do that because times are getting out of whack or things like that, they can always rebalance at any time. So with that background, Raghu, I'd love you to share a little bit about the results of the project and what you've been able to get out of it. The screenshot here, I think, was the very first Dr. Rastogi, the very first visit we had going through the system when we kicked it off at 12:01 on that night on September 30th. What have been the results of the project? How is the load balancing and the routing and capacity optimization you sought working out for you, and what flexibility has it provided your service lines, providers, and members?
Yeah, absolutely. I think one thing, the demand just went through the roof, where people said easy access, and we needed to figure out what was there. So wait times started going up, just like a call center. And you say there are extended wait times. Why are people, is it easy access? What do we throttle? How do we do certain things? One of the things which I think was important for us when for us to say operationally, how do we do it? Some regions have what I'm going to say emergency physicians that they will be able to staff. Some do not have, and they'll say, I only do adult, I only do pediatrics, and I do not have the specialties that I need to do. And there was a staffing need to say, how are we going to staff these calls? So that was one operational thing that was important. The second thing was an ability to say, even when we go forward and say, we have a platform, an ability to pull physicians from a pool who are having the regular scheduled appointments. That was very important for us, because you do not know when you're going to have a spike. You do not know, just like call center, how do I go and search for somebody in a network of medical office buildings and say, my queue has gone forward, but it cannot be a human or a person saying, okay, I'm monitoring the queue, add 2 more physicians here and do that. How can we have technology go and sweep our Health Connect and figure out where the open slots are, who's a physician that's available, and say, and notify and bring that in. So there was a need for us to look at that. The nuance there is you can do it once, but knowing Kaiser, we have 16 Epic instances with variations in every region with all complexities. We needed to abstract that and say, we cannot have a physician relearn how they are going to go and say, oh, I need to do a video visit. I need to understand, oh, I'm doing something different. So it was important to abstract the physician experience of how to come into the operational flow of this. The reason I'm probably highlighting that is because I'm wearing a technology hat. If we were very, very conscious and saying, how do we make it as simple and easy for a physician to come in and take calls, and accommodate all the variations and make it easy for staffing and do all of that. What do we do for somebody who's saying, how do I have an operational arm for saying direct traffic? So we said,